The morning air was crisp, still clinging to the last threads of winter despite the promise of spring. In Charlotte, North Carolina, the trees whispered with the wind, their skeletal branches reaching skyward like bony fingers. Lena moved briskly. Along the park's trail, the solace of her sneakers tapping softly against the gravel path. It was her usual morning routine, a solitary walk to clear her thoughts before the day consumed her. She had no way of knowing that today would change. Her life forever died as she rounded a bend near the denser part of the woods. She slowed. There was something different in the air, not the usual rustle of squirrels or the cawing of distant crows. It was something softer, something desperate. A faint sound, almost imperceptible, drifted to her ears, a whimper. At first, she dismissed it, probably a bird. But then it came again, clearer this time, a soft, broken cry. She stopped in her tracks. Her heart thudded in her chest. She glanced into the woods, her eyes scanning the brush and tree trunks. The sound came again, more urgent, like a muffled sob. Her instincts kicked in. She left the path, pushing gently through low-hanging branches and dried ferns. The terrain was uneven, but she kept going, following the heartbreaking sound. And then she saw him. Tied tightly to a tree with a rough nylon rope was a small German shepherd puppy. His fur was dirty and matted, clinging to his frail body in patches. He wasn't barking. He wasn't growling. He was just waiting. His big brown eyes met hers, filled with confusion and fear, but also a flicker of hope. That gaze, it was the kind of look that stopped time. Lena's breath caught in her throat. Oh my God! The rope around his belly had rubbed raw into his skin. He was shivering, not just from the cold, but from what seemed like exhaustion, starvation, and heartbreak. But what shattered Lena entirely was the paper tape just above his head, fluttering softly in the wind. She knelt slowly, speaking in a whisper. "It's okay, baby. I'm not going to hurt you." The puppy cowered but didn't pull away. His body trembled, but he didn't run. He couldn't. The rope was too tight. Lena reached for the note, gently peeling it from the tree. It was scribbled in blue ink on lined paper, the writing shaky and rushed. "My name is Max. I didn't want to do this. I love him so much. He's the only good thing I had left. But I lost my home and my job. We've been living in my car for weeks. I can't feed myself, let alone him. Please, please don't hate me. He's a good boy. He deserves better. If you find him, please love him. I'm so sorry. J." Lena. Read the note 3 times before the words truly sank in. Her eyes welled up with tears that slid silently down her cheeks. Her heart clenched in her chest with a pain so sharp, so deep, she had to hold her breath to keep from sobbing. The words weren't just ink on paper. They were the last cries of someone who had loved deeply, but had been cornered by life's cruelty. She looked back at the puppy. Max thought he was watching her, still unsure, still trembling. But there was a trust beginning to form, a fragile thread connecting his gaze to hers. Lena slowly reached into her coat pocket and pulled out the granola bar she always carried. She unwrapped it carefully and broke off a piece, extending her hand. "Here." "Max, you hungry, sweet boy?" He sniffed hesitantly, then crept forward an inch. His tiny pink tongue darted out to taste the food. Encouraged, he took a bite, then another. Lena smiled through her tears. "That's it. You're okay now. I got you." She glanced at the rope. It had dug so deeply into his side that she winced at the sight. Carefully, she pulled a small pair of folding scissors from her bag, something she always kept on her keychain. With a slow, steady hand, she cut the rope away. As it loosened, Max yelped softly, the tension releasing from his body. Freed, he backed up a few inches, unsure of what came next. But Lena didn't move too fast. She simply sat there, waiting, holding her hand out with another piece of granola, and then, like a miracle, Max inched forward. He sniffed her hand, then licked her fingers. And finally, he rested his tiny head in her lap. That was all it took. Lena broke. Her tears came fast, falling into his fur as she wrapped her arms around him. "You didn't deserve this," she whispered. "None of this is your fault. I don't know who Jay is, but they loved you. I can feel it. And now I'll love you too." The forest seemed to go still around them. Time paused. A woman with a broken heart and a puppy with a broken past had found each other. Two souls, abandoned in different ways, had collided in the most unexpected of places. Lena stood, cradling Max gently in her arms. He was light, far too light, but he didn't resist. He nestled into her chest as if he had been waiting for this moment all along. She looked down at the note one last time, then folded it carefully and placed it in her pocket. She would never throw it away. Max had been left with nothing but that note and a rope, and now he had a second chance. Lena walked back through the woods, her steps deliberate, her arms full, her heart heavy but alive. Behind her, the tree stood bare, the rope hanging loose at its base like the remains of a nightmare. Ahead of her was Hope, and in her arms was Max, no longer just a forgotten puppy tied to a tree, but the beginning of a story that neither of them could have imagined. Lena held Max tightly as she drove, glancing over at him every few seconds as if afraid he might vanish. He lay curled in the passenger seat, still trembling but visibly calmer now, his body wrapped in a warm fleece blanket she had kept in her trunk. Every once in a while his eyes would flutter open and land on her, as if trying to decide whether this kindness was real. And each time she met his gaze, Lena whispered softly, "You're safe now, Max, I promise." When they reached her small home on the outskirts of town, the morning sun had begun to stretch its arms across the rooftops. Lena gently lifted Max into her arms again and carried him inside, cradling him as though he were made of glass. She placed him carefully in the middle of her living room on a soft pile of towels and pillows she quickly arranged. Her heart cracked once more at how little he moved, not from laziness or defiance, but from exhaustion and unfamiliarity. He didn't bark. He didn't explore. He just stared, waiting to be told it was okay. Lena made a quick call to the nearest animal shelter with a clinic wing, explaining everything, how she found him, the note, and his current state. The woman on the other end of the line, a kind soul named Denise, told her to bring Max in immediately. They'd waive the fee. "We see this more often than we should," Denise sighed. "Thank you for not walking away." 20 minutes later, Lena stepped into the shelter's small clinic. The walls were lined with photos of adopted pets, smiling faces of humans and animals who had found each other. But the air in the lobby was heavy, filled with equal parts hope and heartbreak. "Hi, you must be Lena," a nurse greeted her. "Let's take a look at Max." The vet, Dr. Harper, was an older man with gentle hands and a voice like honey. He spoke directly to Max, as though the dog understood every word. "You've been through a lot, haven't you, buddy?" Lena stayed beside Max the whole time, holding his paw, whispering calming words. As Dr. Harper examined him, Max flinched a few times but didn't pull away. The vet checked his eyes, ears, joints, and ran a small scan for a microchip. Nothing. Max had no digital footprint. No records. Only the note taped to the tree. "He's underweight, dehydrated, and definitely malnourished," Dr. Harper said as he gently pressed against Max's ribs. "But no broken bones, no signs of abuse. His coat's just dirty, not damaged. Whoever left him there, I think they really did love him. They just couldn't handle it anymore." Lena nodded, blinking back tears. "That note broke me. They didn't dump him like trash. They just had nowhere else to go. I want to find out who they were. But for now, I just want to help Max heal." Dr. Harper administered fluids, a vitamin shot, and gave her a special high-calorie puppy food. "Start him with small portions. His stomach won't handle too much yet, but if he eats, that's a good sign." Back at home, Lena gently placed a bowl of food in front of Max. He stared at it for a moment, sniffed, then slowly began to eat. A few mouthfuls at first, cautious and unsure. Then a little more. And then he looked up at Lena with the tiniest flicker of a wag in his tail. That simple movement sent a fresh wave of emotion crashing into her. It was the first sign, the first proof, that Max was starting to believe he might be safe. Over the next few days, Lena rearranged her world for Max. Her work-from-home schedule allowed her to be with him every moment. She moved furniture to clear safe spaces, laid out soft rugs for him to walk on, and gently introduced toys, squeaky ones, plush ones, even a tennis ball that he only sniffed at for now. She documented every step in a small journal. Day 1, Max took 3 bites. On his own. Still no barking. Sleeps a lot. I think he dreams, his paws twitch. Day 2, he wagged his tail twice today. Once when I came back from the kitchen. Progress. Day 3, he followed me from the living room to the bedroom. Only a few steps. But he followed. Each entry felt like a victory. Each tiny milestone, a miracle. But Lena also noticed the fear that still lingered in Max's eyes. Any sudden noise, a phone ringing, a dropped spoon, would send him cowering into corners. He was always alert, always bracing for something bad to happen. He never barked, never whined, just watched, waited. At night, he would whimper in his sleep. Not loud, but heart-wrenching. Lena would get up, sit beside his bed, and gently pet him until he calmed down. "You're okay now," she'd whisper. "No one's leaving you again. I swear it." One afternoon, a week after his rescue, Lena was sitting on the couch reading when she felt a nudge against her leg. She looked down to see Max, his eyes soft, placing one tiny paw on her knee. He didn't want food. He didn't need the bathroom. He just wanted to be close. Without a word, Lena scooped him up and held him against her chest. He buried his face into her neck and let out a long, contented sigh. That moment broke something open in her. All the worry, all the anger at whoever Jay was, all the confusion over how anyone could leave such a gentle creature behind. It faded into one overwhelming truth. Max had chosen her, and Lena knew then that she would do whatever it took to keep him safe, happy, and loved. Still, she couldn't forget the note. Late that night, she pulled it from her drawer and read it again. Each word felt heavier now that she knew Max, now that she had seen the gentle soul behind those eyes. She wondered where Jay was now, if they were still living out of their car. If they missed Max as much as he had missed them, she decided. She'd try to find them, not to scold or shame, but to let them know Max was alive, safe and healing. And maybe, if life was cruel enough to tear them apart, maybe kindness could build something new from the pieces. Because sometimes, the most broken beginnings lead to the most beautiful bonds. Max was beginning to shine. A little over 2 weeks had passed since Lena had found him tied to that tree, and every day she watched a new version of him slowly bloom. The once silent puppy had started to bark soft, hesitant sounds at first, but now there were joyful yips when she came home from the store or when the sunlight hit his blanket just right. He had discovered the joys of belly rubs and squeaky toys, and he had started sleeping through the night without whimpering. But while Max healed, Lena's heart stayed restless. She kept that folded piece of paper near her knit stand, rereading it late at night, tracing the trembling handwriting with her fingers as if she could reach back in time and touch the person who wrote it. She couldn't stop wondering about Jay, the one who had loved Max enough to leave him with a plea, not cruelty. The note haunted her, not in anger, but in empathy. Someone out there was grieving this puppy, and they didn't even know he was okay. One quiet Saturday morning, while Max napped with his head resting on her slipper, Lena opened her laptop. She wasn't sure what she was looking for, but something inside her told her not to let it go. If Jay had been local, if they had really written that note in Charlotte, maybe, just maybe, she could find them. She began with community groups. Charlotte's local Facebook pages were full of posts, lost pets, found pets, rehoming stories. She typed a message carefully and attached a photo of Max, freshly bathed and bright-eyed, with the caption, "This is Max. I found him tied, too." A tree in Latta Park 2 weeks ago with a heartbreaking note left beside him. It said the owner lost their home and job and couldn't care for him anymore. If you are the person who wrote that note, I want you to know he is safe. He is loved. Please reach out. No judgment, just love. She hesitated before hitting post. Her heart pounding. Would anyone respond? Would people react with cruelty or suspicion? She didn't care. This wasn't about drama. It was about closure. For her and for Max, and maybe for someone else out there who was hurting just as badly. Within hours, the post had hundreds of reactions. Dozens of comments flooded in, some offering support, others trying to piece together clues, and a few sharing stories of similar heartbreak. But one message stood out. It came late that evening, just as Lena was brushing her teeth. A private message notification popped up on her phone. The sender's name was only Jen S. "Hi, I think I might be the one who left Max. I've been praying someone kind would find him. I didn't know where else to turn. I don't want to cause any trouble. I just needed to know. Is he really okay?" Lena's hands trembled as she typed her reply. "Jen, yes. He's more than okay. He's thriving. He's the sweetest boy I've ever known. He's safe, loved, and home. I'm so glad you reached out. Would you be open to talking?" There was a pause. A minute passed. Then 5. Then the typing bubble appeared. "I'm living in a shelter right now. I've been clean for 6 months. I lost everything during the pandemic, my job, my apartment. Max was all I had left. But I couldn't watch him starve. I didn't abandon him because I didn't love him. I left that note hoping someone would understand." Lena sat down on the floor, tears falling silently. She replied, "I understood. From the moment I read that note, I knew it came from love. Would you like to meet him again, even just to see he's okay?" Another pause. Then, "Yes, but only if it won't confuse him or hurt him. I don't want to make it harder for either of you." Lena looked over at Max, still sleeping soundly. She knew this wasn't just about healing him anymore. This was about honoring the bond he once had and the sacrifice someone had made so he could survive. They agreed to meet at a nearby dog-friendly park that Sunday. It was a public space, safe and neutral. Lena didn't know what to expect. She tried not to rehearse the moment in her head, but her mind kept spinning. Would Jen break down? Would Max recognize her? Would he be afraid? The sun was bright when Lena arrived at the park, Max trotting alongside her on his leash, tail wagging. He loved walks now. He had a skip in his step, the bounce of a dog who finally knew what it meant to be loved. They waited by a bench. Max sniffed around curiously. Then Lena saw her, a woman in her late 20s, thin, with a baseball cap pulled low over her eyes and a canvas bag slung over her shoulder. She walked slowly, as if unsure her legs would carry her the whole way. When their eyes met, Lena stood and offered a small wave. "Jen?" The woman nodded. She looked like she hadn't slept, but there was a warmth in her eyes, and aching. Quiet warmth. And then Max looked up. He stared for a moment. His tail paused mid-wag. Then, cautiously, he stepped toward her. He tilted his head. His nose twitched. Jen dropped to her knees without a word. "Hey, buddy," she whispered. Max inched forward. And then, with a small, surprised whimper, he licked her face. Jen broke. The tears came instantly, her hands trembling as she held his face and whispered, again and again, "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." Lena turned away, her hand over her mouth, her own heart aching. She wasn't witnessing a reunion between a dog and his former owner. She was witnessing the rejoining of two pieces that had been torn apart too soon. They stayed like that for several minutes, no rush, no judgment. Just presence. Finally, Jen looked up at Lena. "Thank you. You saved him. And honestly, you saved me too. I've been sober because I made a promise to Max. Even when I left him, I kept that promise. I hoped someone would help him. And now seeing him like this, it's more than I could have ever hoped for." Lena sat beside her. "He's part of my family now. But I want you to know you're always welcome in his life. You didn't give him up because you didn't care. You gave him a chance. That's real love." Jen nodded slowly, her arms still wrapped around Max. "Just knowing that, it's enough." Lena didn't know what to expect after that first meeting in the park. She had driven home with Max curled up in the back seat, quieter than usual, as if he had felt the weight of the encounter too. His eyes stayed wide, reflective, and he leaned against her more than usual that night. Lena had kissed his forehead and whispered, "It's okay, Max. You did good." And yet, something had shifted. Over the next few days, Max seemed deeper. His joy didn't fade, but it softened, like he was more aware of the world now. He would pause by the front door as if listening. He stared at the window longer when it rained. Lena noticed it all. He hadn't forgotten Jen. That brief reunion had stirred something long buried in him. But instead of confusion, Max carried it like a memory he could finally hold with peace. Lena reached out to Jen again the following week. Her message simple. "Would you like to visit, Max? No pressure. We'll go at your pace." Jen replied a few hours later. "Yes, but only if you're okay with it. I know he's yours now. I don't want to intrude. I miss him." And so began a delicate new rhythm, one stitched together with kindness and vulnerability. Jen came over for short visits on Sunday afternoons. She always brought something for Max, a treat, a toy, once even an old blanket from their car that she had managed to save. The moment Max saw it, he sniffed it like it held a secret, then curled up on it like a long-lost treasure. At first, Jen stayed no more than 30 minutes. She would pet Max gently, talk to him softly, and sit beside him on the floor as he laid his head in her lap. Lena gave them space, observing quietly from a distance. There was no jealousy in her heart, no need to claim or control. Instead, she felt something greater, the beauty of shared love. Jen was never inappropriate. She never overstepped. She never asked to take Max or to undo what had already been made whole. Her visits weren't about reclaiming. They were about closure, healing, and gratitude. During one of those visits, Lena made tea and offered Jen a seat at the table. Max rested at their feet, his body stretched peacefully across both women's toes. Jen looked down at him and smiled through the steam of her mug. "He used to sleep like that when we lived in my car. I'd wrap my hoodie around him and he'd curl up right beside the gear shift." Lena nodded, her heart aching. "I can tell he felt safe with you." Jen swallowed hard. "I loved him more than anything. I got him when he was 6 weeks old. Someone was giving away puppies in a parking lot. He chose me, climbed right into my lap. There was silence, warm and heavy. "I never thought I'd let him go," she whispered. "But I watched him get thinner every day. I gave him my food, skipped meals. But eventually, I couldn't keep him safe anymore. And that was the only thing I ever promised him, to keep him safe. So I wrote the note. I tied him gently. I kissed him goodbye, and I walked away sobbing. Lena's eyes shimmered. You did the right thing, Jen. You didn't abandon him. You saved him, and I think he knows it now. Jen looked at her. Do you really think so? Lena nodded. Max isn't scared of you. He doesn't flinch. He remembers your voice, your touch. You gave him love, even when life gave you nothing. Jen didn't say anything for a moment. Then she reached into her canvas bag and pulled out a small notebook. She passed it across the table. These are letters I wrote to him. After I left him, I couldn't talk to anyone else. So I talked to him, on paper. Lena took the notebook, her fingers trembling slightly. The first page was dated 2 days after the rescue. Dear Max, I can't stop crying. I looked for you on every corner the next morning, praying someone cruel hadn't found you. But you were gone, and I hope that means someone kind came instead. I hope you're warm tonight. I hope you still chase butterflies in your dreams. Page after page of aching love. Lena had never read anything so raw. She handed it back with a choked breath. These are beautiful. Thank you for sharing them. Jen smiled, wiping a tear. I think I needed to tell him. But now, maybe I can start writing to myself. That day marked another turning point, not just in Max's journey, but in all three of theirs. Jen began volunteering part-time at the animal shelter where Lena had taken Max after his rescue. It gave her structure, purpose, and the strength to believe she could rebuild her life. Sometimes, she'd come by Lena's house afterward, still in her shelter shirt, smelling faintly of puppies and cleaning solution. Max would greet her with the same happy tail thump every time. But now, after saying hello, he always returned to Lena's side, not because he didn't love Jen, but because he knew his home. One evening, while the three of them sat on Lena's porch watching the sun dip behind the trees, Jen turned and said, I thought a lot about adopting again one day. When I'm stable, maybe when I get my own place, I think Max gave me the courage to try. Lena smiled, brushing her hand over Max's head. And maybe Max's story will help someone else take a chance too. Maybe the next scared pup will find love faster because of him. Jen looked out at the sky, her eyes reflecting the orange glow of sunset. He saved me when I had nothing, and now he's saving others. Max, between them, laid his head down with a quiet sigh, not because he was tired, but because he felt what they felt. Peace. No longer broken, no longer torn between past and present. Just loved, fully and forever. It had been nearly 3 months since Max had been found tied to that lonely tree, and Lena could barely recognize the terrified puppy she had carried home that cold morning. The timid, skeletal dog with sad eyes had grown into a vibrant, curious, loving companion. He had filled out, his ribs no longer visible beneath his now lustrous coat. His tail wagged freely, his bark was stronger, and his eyes held a spark that hadn't been there before. But it wasn't just Max who had transformed. Jen had moved out of the shelter and into a small studio apartment of her own. With help from a local outreach program, she'd landed a part-time job assisting at the same shelter she once called for help. She had begun rebuilding, not just her life, but her sense of worth. And she credited it all to a dog she had once feared she would lose forever. Max saved me, she said simply whenever anyone asked. Even when I let go, he never stopped loving. Lena and Jen had formed a bond that was hard to define. What started as a moment of shared heartbreak had evolved into something deeper, a quiet partnership based on mutual respect, forgiveness, and healing. They didn't speak every day, but when they did, it was meaningful. Sometimes they exchanged photos of Max. Sometimes Jen would send Lena a message like, "Tell him I miss his floppy ears today." And Lena always replied with a picture of Max napping upside down or chewing on his favorite rubber bone. It was early summer now. The trees were lush with green, birds sang louder in the mornings, and the world had seemingly shrugged off winters. Wait, on a bright Saturday afternoon, Lena decided it was time. She had been planning it for weeks, something quiet, something personal, a celebration not of Max's rescue, but of his resurrection. She called it Max's Forever Day. She invited Jen and a few of the shelter staff who had played roles in Max's healing. No decorations, no banners. Just a backyard gathering with lemonade, music, and love. Lena set up a small shaded area with a water bowl that had Max's name painted on it, and a little table with photos printed out, the first picture of Max underweight and scared, the next of him sleeping in her lap, then one with Jen holding him at the park, and another of him chasing butterflies in the yard. Jen arrived quietly, wearing a denim jacket and holding a small box wrapped in twine. When Lena greeted her with a hug, she said, "You didn't have to bring anything." Jen smiled softly. "It's not for you. It's for Max." Inside the box was a handcrafted leather collar with a metal tag engraved with the words, "You were always loved." Lena's breath caught. She knelt beside Max and gently removed the old nylon collar she had bought on a whim the day she rescued him. Replacing it with a new one, she fastened the buckle with trembling fingers. "There," she whispered. "Now everyone will know what we've always known." The small group gathered in the backyard, sipping lemonade and telling stories about Max. Dr. Harper was there, his cane resting beside his chair as he watched Max play with another dog from the shelter. Denise, the shelter staffer who had taken Lena's first phone call, brought homemade dog treats and called Max a miracle with paws. At one point, Jen knelt in front of Max and whispered something only he could hear. He wagged his tail and licked her chin, then returned to Lena's side with that goofy, content smile he had perfected. After the sun dipped low in the sky, casting golden light across the yard, Lena stood and clinked her glass gently. "I know we all have different reasons for being here today," she said, her voice catching slightly. "But we're here because of a little dog who reminded us all what love really means." Max was left with a note that broke my heart and healed it all at once. That note wasn't a goodbye. It was a prayer. And I think we're the answer to it. Jen's eyes shimmered, and she looked down, her hand brushing Max's fur. Lena continued, "I've always believed in second chances. But Max, he taught me to believe in third, fourth, and fifth chances too. He taught me that broken doesn't mean ruined, and lost doesn't mean gone forever. Max wasn't rescued by me. He rescued all of us." The group raised their glasses in a quiet toast to Max. The rest of the evening passed in a warm blur. Fireflies danced around the garden lights, laughter rose into the night, and Max wandered from person to person collecting pets and kisses like a celebrity on tour. Later, after everyone had gone home and the yard was quiet again, Lena and Jen sat side by side on the porch steps, watching Max nap on the grass, belly exposed to the stars. "Do you think he knows?" Jen asked softly. Lena nodded. "I think he's always known. He just had to wait until the world caught up to him." Jen leaned her head against Lena's shoulder. "Thank you for loving him when I couldn't." "You did love him," Lena said. "You just loved him in the hardest way possible, by letting him go." They sat in silence for a long time. No more words were needed. Inside, the framed note still hung near the entryway of Lena's home, not as a reminder of pain, but as a symbol of sacrifice, strength, and the quiet hope that lives inside even the most shattered heart. Max stirred. In his sleep, letting out a sleepy sigh. He was home. He had always been loved. And now, finally, he would never be alone again. Asterisk, if this story touched your heart like it did ours, please give it a thumbs up, share it with someone who loves dogs, and subscribe to Cutest Gallery for more emotional, heartwarming stories like this one. Max's journey from abandonment to unconditional love reminds us that even the smallest acts of kindness can save a life. We'd love to hear your thoughts. Drop a comment below and tell us. What would you say to the person who left Max with that note? Let's talk in the comments.